Has World War III already began? Chris over at Capiami believes so. They put out a video yesterday or the day before saying World War III has already begun. I got sent this video like 5 or 6 times over the past 24 hours on Instagram, which, by the way, when I say I've been sent this video, if you want to communicate with me or send me a video or anything like that, the best place to reach me is on Instagram. That is the place where I interact the most with people. So go to @originalhuman_ or go to my the Drink Morale Instagram. There'll be links down below to the pair of them. That's the best place to communicate with me if you want to recommend videos to me, by the way. But I wasn't going to watch this because I feel like all I do these days is watch doom and gloom. That's all I feel. And watching a video saying that World War III has begun, it just felt a bit too much. I've been watching like the Artemis 2 takeoff, very uplifting stuff. I wasn't really sure about this, but a friend of mine said, no, you need to watch this. He's making some really, really good points. So we're going to watch it. I like Chris. I like Capiami. I think they are one of, if not the best YouTube channel when it comes to military information and news. So they're at 171,000 subscribers. Let's get them up as much as possible. If you're not subscribed to Capiami, I will leave a link down below to the original video. Please go over there and give them some love. Before we get started, check out Chug. 10% off, link down below for the best drinking vessel in the world. Get yourself one of these if you want to look like a legend. If you want to look like a knight of the Seven Kingdoms while you're drinking your drink around the fire this summer, get yourself a Chug. 10% off. Handmade here in the UK, ships to America. It's a small business, always important to support small businesses. You get free customization. Look, you put my initial on it, and you get a free bag that's on the inside of that. Highly recommend it. Also, check out Morale if you haven't already. You'll find out information about... This is my business, by the way. How sick's this? I made a drinks business. It's just amazing. It's just sick. Anyway, let's pull this up. Let's see what Capiami's got to say about the miserable state of the planet right now. Let me turn on subbies.
Look at what's happening right now. The world's most powerful countries are actively fueling each other's wars.
True.
American intelligence is on the front lines, targeting Russian ground forces inside of Ukraine, while Russia retaliates in the Middle East, providing targeting against US personnel now. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of North Korean troops are flowing into Russia, and Chinese intelligence is aiding Russia in targeting and killing Ukrainians. The world's conflicts are becoming more interconnected. All of it happening at the same time across different regions with the same pattern repeating, I think.
He's got that piano music to make it even more depressing in the background. You're doing good there, Chris.
Because at the center of it all is targeting data, and it's already deciding the outcome of wars. Today, I'm going to show you how this works, how modern superpowers target one another using clandestine network of intelligence officers on the ground. And I want to explore how the nature of proxy wars has changed so much since the Cold War that we might already be in World War III and not yet realize it.
True.
The shift started almost immediately after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Just 2 months in, the United States began feeding Ukraine targeting data on Russian troop positions. The goal was to help defend Ukraine's homeland and sovereignty against the invasion without putting boots on the ground. Behind the scenes, something more significant was happening. Ukrainian Lieutenant General Zabroski was covertly flown out of Ukraine to Wiesbaden in Germany, which is home to the headquarters of the US Army Europe. There, he met Lieutenant General Christopher Donahue, who's the commander of the American 18th Airborne Corps Task Force Dragon. What came out of that meeting was a new system born. It was a direct pipeline between American intelligence and Ukrainian firepower. From that point on, the defense of Ukraine would be planned together. Targets would be identified, prioritized, and struck through a shared network. And it marked the beginning of something new, I think. A level of integration between two militaries that hadn't really existed in a proxy war ever before. According to reporting,
he's going a lot about information here, which I think is one of the most, if not the most important part of a battle, which you already know. I've spoke about that countless times. But also the finances behind this is quite insane, isn't it? How these giant countries have been financing these smaller wars. Yeah. This is not looking good.
From the New York Times, the U.S. government authorizes a partnership of intelligence, strategy, and planning at this point. America's Task Force Dragon is given the job to act as a mission command center for the United States and Ukrainian military officers. Lieutenant General Donahue is at the head of overseeing the coordination. Then, something unusual started happening. Reports started coming out of scores of Russian high-ranking generals and field officers killed at an unusually high rate, repeatedly hit in precision strikes. How? The pattern pointed back to one thing: satellite intelligence. Detection to destruction was compressed into just minutes. This was widely credited to U.S. intelligence, even as U.S. officials denied it.
Does make me wonder, when are we going to start seeing satellites actively targeted? Unless they already are being actively targeted. It's outside of my field of knowledge.
No one had ever seen before what would happen when intelligence ISR capability from US Space Force was married with these new low-cost precision drones and long-range fires. What happened was a deadly form of high-intensity, large-scale combat.
Yeah. Satellites are becoming cheaper to
because
put up
according
as well.
to the New York Times, the United States focused on providing the location and other details about the Russian military's mobile headquarters. These are the hard to track ones because they relocate often. The way the kill chain works is Ukrainian commanders take US intelligence and combine it with that geographic information that they have with their own intelligence. For example, Ukraine often intercepts communications from Russian forces, their radio chatter, and they have the best ability in Ukraine to translate and understand that. Then they package that together and they're able to find senior Russian officers and send long-range fires onto their position. Sharing intelligence in a proxy war in the past was always considered safe because it's invisible. It's fully deniable, there's plausible deniability there, and it often wouldn't have a major day-to-day impact on the battle. We're
getting to the point now as well where nothing is really secret anymore, is it? Like everything, like, because there is eyes on everything, because everything is being viewed online, everyone can see it. Lies are becoming so much easier to see that it's almost jarring for military and government programs in a way. Yeah, there's some government programs that are still secretive and all that other stuff, but the ability to keep them secrets is just becoming more and more difficult, isn't it?
War. But today, what's different is that this is what they call real-time intelligence. It's far more impactful than it ever was even 10 years ago. It's monitoring the situation maxing. Former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, confirmed some of these reports, stating at the time there's a significant amount of intelligence flowing to Ukraine from the United States. We have opened up the pipes, end quote.
Wow.
The U.S. Task Force Dragon reportedly told the Ukrainian military exactly where Russians were positioned from their network of Russian spies that they have behind the lines, and they combine that with other methods and sources. And according to New York Times, by May 2022, they had a whole entire kill chain system set up that went live that month. But first, before we get into that, all the animation work in today's episode is sponsored by Sheath.
Are you like me and you used to just raw dog a pair of jeans with no
showed a chain of different coordinates. These locations were divided into baskets that were labeled priority 1 for things like main battle tanks and high-ranking targets like S-300 systems, then priority 2 for infantry formations that were less important, so on and so on. According to the reports, the U.S. intelligence support to the Ukrainian armed forces had a decisive effect on the battlefield. They confirmed targets which were identified by the Ukrainian military, and then they pointed fire to new targets. And when you think about that, providing this level of constant, actionable intelligence that leads to lethal strikes on an adversary like this is almost unheard of in recent.
It is interesting because I've been covering the Ukraine-Russia war now for years on this channel. Every now and again, I'll dip back in, I'll give updates, etc. We never talk about the flow of information from Western countries to Ukraine, whether that be the US, like we're talking about here, or other Western countries. I am almost positive that Britain, France, Germany, all these other countries are also doing the same thing for Ukraine and helping them out. And we never really talk about that as a whole because it's almost as if it's like yeah, of course we would. But then the moment China starts giving information to Russia, we're a bit like, oh my God, here we go. Do you get what I'm saying? So it is quite jarring in a way, isn't it? that flow of information. We always talk about the finances, the equipment that's getting sent over, the training. We've seen Ukrainian soldiers being trained by the British. We see this stuff all the time. We've talked about it all the time. We've seen British tanks on the ground. But the flow of information is completely different.
In history and proxy wars. Behind all this technology, though, you still need skilled people making it work on the ground.
That's true.
This coordination still requires some advisors on the ground. Like in past proxy wars, it often requires intelligence officers inside that foreign country helping coordinate this surveillance network. To that point, beginning right after Russia's invasion of Crimea in 2014, the CIA built a whole network of 12 bases near the front line in Ukraine to monitor and relay information back to the headquarters. Their goal was to help Ukraine defend their nation and sovereignty. These CIA paramilitary officers were the only US assets that stayed in the country to help hold the line after the Russian invasion was well underway.
Well, I want to know more about that. Specifically, that's so interesting to me.
These bases turned out to be critical for coordinating these precision strikes. They are the listening posts in the Ukrainian forests that are right along the Russian border. So Ivan Bakanov, who was then the Ukrainian Domestic Intelligence Agency head of the SBU, said, quote, "Without them, there would have been no way for us to resist the Russians or to beat them," end quote.
That's significant.
Ukraine depends on U.S. intelligence across the entire battlefield. On the ground, it feeds targeting data into systems like their HIMARS, ATACMS, M777 artillery. That's how they find Russian armored columns, track troop movements, and hit them before they even know that they've been spotted. In the air, the same intelligence becomes an early warning system. Missile launches get detected, flight paths are tracked, alerts go out sometimes minutes before impact. This is where modern proxy wars break from everything that have come before, I believe, because the advantage today is situational awareness. For most,
he said the advantage today is situational awareness. I believe that the idea of that flow of information, and I spoke about this so many times, because we learn it so much in the Marines, that the more information you have, the more chance you're going to win that battle. In whether that be a small skirmish or whether that be the war as a whole. It's something that is just absolutely smashed into us in the Marines quite a lot. And I believe it. I believe that that's been implemented for a very, very, very long time. So I don't think it's anything new. What I do think is new is the ability for it to happen because of the technology of satellites and communications and the cooperation between countries, etc. So yeah, seeing this is just a new evolution of what's already been happening in previous wars, really, isn't it?
Of history, including through the Vietnam War, armies fought partially blind. Today, some of them don't. It's like removing the fog of war from the whole map in Command and Conquer. But
it doesn't mean that that wasn't a priority for them, though. They never had it as good as we have it now. But they were doing the best they had with information with what at the time, you know? Like, yes, a lot of the stuff was blind. They didn't know a lot of stuff. There was a lot of surprises from ambushes, etc. And you get that to some extent still today. There is still ambushes and stuff happening. It's just that the information is a lot clearer. But they were using the best they had at the time.
April 2022, the United States is providing the exact real-time location of Russia's Moskva warship. Upon receiving the information, the Ukrainian military does what you might expect them to do. They fire 2 Neptune anti-ship missiles from the coast. The missiles strike the ship, igniting fires that send the Russian ship to the bottom of the Black Sea. It's the largest Russian warship lost in combat in decades, and it's thanks to US-provided intelligence. This is a shock to the world. It's the type of attack that could not have been conducted during a proxy war in the Cold War. Space-based surveillance capabilities just did not yet exist.
And like I said earlier, the ability to put satellites up for information is becoming so much cheaper. I think the space, the fight for space is going to be way bigger over the next decade than we realize. Satellites, this is why we've seen a whole new space race that literally started well, it didn't start yesterday, but it was a big step forward for America and the Western world yesterday when Artemis 2 went up. We're seeing the push to get to the moon quicker because we know China's trying to do the same thing. And the idea of dominating that space, dominating the satellite area of space, I don't know what it would be called necessarily, is going to become the biggest asset to fighting wars, like, period. And so I think we're going to start seeing multiple things happening. I think we're going to start seeing satellites being targeted way more than they are already. And I think we're going to see a lot more push for the Space Force of the US, and I think we'll start seeing European versions of that soon as well.
This kind of strike would have been nearly impossible to coordinate from across the globe in real time back then. Even at the height of the US-Soviet rivalry, intelligence sharing never operated at this speed or precision. Immediately following the attacks, there were behind-the-scenes fights about whether or not the US actually meant to give the information for the purposes of a lethal strike. Did a miscommunication spark an international crisis? The details of this intelligence partnership was disclosed for the first time by the New York Times after being a closely guarded secret for decades. Adam Entios and Michael Schwartz interviewed over 200 current and former US officials in Ukraine, United States, and Europe to learn these details. For most of modern history, this level of involvement would have meant that you were already at war. And that's what makes this moment so strange, I think. Because of these emerging technologies, we're watching something that looks like direct war, but isn't being treated like one yet. And to understand...
Well, that's what I was saying about how the flow of information from America and the Western world to Ukraine has kind of just been like an obvious thing, like it's a given. But the moment we start hearing China is giving that information to Russia, it feels dangerous. But the truth is, this is an assisted war, isn't it?
And why this matters, you have to compare it to how proxy wars used to work. During the Cold War, proxy wars were blunt instruments. You ship weapons, maybe you'd send some advisors, you'd pass along some intelligence, but that intelligence was slow, incomplete, and usually long outdated by the time it reached the battlefield, limiting its usefulness. Because it'd be a spy plane photo taken days or weeks ago. It was a diplomatic cable with just a guess of where the enemy might be. This limited capability acted as a kind of buffer for proxy wars. It kept superpowers involved in each other's fights, but not too involved. But once you remove that buffer because of these emerging technologies, the moment you can actually see where enemy forces are in real time and help destroy them within minutes. This is a different type of emerging proxy war. I think we have yet to fully articulate and put into words. There is no clear historical precedent for us on what the rules are when it comes to assisting with space-based intelligence and how it interacts with new weapon systems. With the advent of cheap attack drones, now every army has access to precision bombs. But on the other hand, what most of these countries do not have and what they lack that makes these weapons so deadly is highly sophisticated, expensive satellite networks that knows where targets are in real time. Because
we do know they're highly sophisticated and expensive, but they are getting cheaper. This is the worrying part now. Technology is advancing so quickly, so exponentially that it's getting cheaper. And so what I think is happening personally is I think a lot of this space race that's happening right now is not only a way of showing force and dominating. There's other reasons, like the idea of having dominate the land on the moon and all this other stuff with Artemis and the Artemis program. But I ultimately also think that it's about getting technology in the sky so that when these other countries that don't have as much of a GDP start putting these cheaper satellites in the sky, the US and the Western world already has a dominant, what's the word I'm looking for? Dominant territory. And so they're able to take them out if they want from space. That's what I think is going to happen.
In modern war, the bottleneck is having precise, live intelligence updates and analysts to coordinate that information. It takes decades and billions of dollars to create this ability, and only a few countries have it. No one assumed Ukraine would have access to this capability prior to the war. You see, the US operates roughly 300 military satellites overhead, costing over $20 billion each year to operate and billions more in funding for Space Force to command it.
Do you know what's crazy? 20 billion per year is insane, but the information they're getting from this is invaluable. It's so worth the money. Like, it doesn't even have a price on the information I bet they're getting from these satellites compared to every other country.
If it were just high quality satellite images, that would be pretty neat, but what makes this truly overpowered is its ability to track emissions and infrared heat signatures for early missile warning, and what makes it unique is its saturation. The US is at a point where there is continuous satellite coverage instead of having to wait days or weeks to task another satellite for a pass over a region.
Pure domination.
The US military has a huge team of analysts and computing power that are given the job of comparing satellite images across time.
The whole Space Force became such a meme, and I think it became a meme because Donald Trump put it into power, right? It became quite a funny thing. People started memeing like Space Marines and stuff like that. The truth is, I think it's so important. I think it is so important. And I think Britain should have some sort of Space Force. I think NATO should. Although they probably do to some extent, but it'll be attached to the Air Force, just like what the US has done, where they've detached it from the Air Force and they've given it its own power. I think the UK should be doing the same thing.
What has changed? For example, if a satellite image shows that a door was previously shut, but is now open a day later in a village, or if boxes that were piled up outside that house have vanished and moved at that location, these are tiny, almost imperceivable changes that would be very difficult for a human to notice with your naked eye when you're going through just, hundreds and thousands of kilometers of...
Imagine what that's like now with AI as well, and how more intricate you can get.
Different villages. But these are the subtle clues that are picked up by software and algorithms and tracking tools today that notice tiny, minute sub-pixel changes. These changes are enough to indicate a degree of certainty that enemy troops are hiding there and to send a rocket, a missile, a drone, or artillery fire on that position.
Information, man.
There
is the
is
most
over
important.
80 years of precedent for what the red lines are in proxy wars, of what is and is not okay, what provokes full-scale war and what doesn't. One red line that was crossed, for instance, was in the Korean War when the United States got too close to China's border and then China sent their own forces in and there was full-scale war. But today, new capabilities developed since then are rewriting the rules faster than we can keep up with. This American intelligence targeting became so instrumental that it's been used as leverage repeatedly by the US government across administrations, from the Biden administration to the Trump administration, for varying reasons at different times. By May 2024, the Ukrainian government was asking the Biden administration for more access to an increased number of targets deeper inside of Russian territory, which was initially refused. The US government had been withholding targeting data inside Russia, fearing retaliation and escalation. By March of 2025, when the Trump administration took office, they initially shut off intelligence, and it had an almost immediate effect. Once American intelligence sharing was stopped, immediately the Ukrainian defenses fell apart in some regions. They moved backwards, retreating out of Kursk, unable to hold off Russian assaults without live, updated information on those assaults' locations. The withholding of targeting data and surveillance had a major impact on the front lines of the war. It was widely seen as being used as leverage to twist Ukraine's arm into accepting US terms for a peace deal with Russia. Then the US government reversed course and resumed intelligence support to Ukraine a few weeks later. When it became clear that Russia was not willing to sign a peace deal quickly, the US turned around, and half a year later, in October of 2025, the United States under the Trump administration increased satellite targeting assistance like we'd never seen before. The US started giving Ukraine precision targeting deep inside Russia for the first time ever. U.S. intelligence provided battle damage assessments on strikes against Russian oil refineries. The U.S. started assisting Ukraine in plotting routes to hit these refineries and avoid Russian air defense bubbles. These efforts and recent Ukrainian attacks on oil pipelines and tankers have led to 40% of Russia's total export capacity for their oil destroyed by March of 2026. U.S. and European seizures of Russia's fleet pushed the proxy war into more uncharted territory. U.S. Special Forces spent the last few months seizing millions of barrels worth of Russian oil and Russian oil tankers that supported Russia's economy and war effort.
We've seen that footage, haven't we, of this shadow fleet being taken. There was the one that was off the coast of Scotland. That's been quite a thing. And I think because it happened quite quickly after the Venezuela thing, people were like, oh my God, what's going on? But the truth is, it's been happening for a little while now.
Ukraine was given satellite locations of Russian oil tankers that they attacked. Never before in history of warfare have battles hinged on space-based satellite data. Providing aid that kills adversaries' troops in a proxy war is definitely not new. Russian and Chinese aid during the Vietnam and Korean War killed thousands of U.S. soldiers, and the U.S. killed thousands of Russians with aid to Afghanistan in the 1980s, just to name a few of a long list of examples. However, what we're seeing today, I think, is a new type of aid that has never existed before, that is a capability legitimately able to change the outcome of battles, if not entire wars. So how do we quantify providing high-tech targeting data for an army? Is it the same as killing thousands of soldiers? Is it seen as permissible by adversaries? Where exactly does it fall on the escalation ladder? And so this is where the story stops just being about Ukraine. Because once one country proves a strategy is effective and it works well, others start trying to do the same thing. The model spreads, the playbook spreads, the field manual is copied, so to speak, and suddenly it becomes unclear to me what a proxy war even looks like.
Yeah.
Because now in 2026, Russia is providing targeting data to the Iranian IRGC ballistic missile force. And with this information, the IRGC was able to kill 6 Americans, destroy a THAAD radar system worth over $300 million, and recently a $270 million E-3 Sentry aircraft on a tarmac. And they sent the global economy into a nosedive with attacks on the Strait of Hormuz and neighboring countries in the Gulf with their airports and infrastructure.
It's crazy how quickly everything has escalated in the start of 2026. It's now what, April 2nd? The first 3 months of 2026 have just been worldwide chaos, hasn't it? It's almost soul destroying in a way.
Think pieces are arguing that we're already in World War III in a new form. Some world leaders and foreign ministers are saying we are already in a new type of world war that is unfamiliar to us.
True.
One way I heard it put was that we are not in a world war, but a world at war. And the impact is fast growing beyond that.
Of course, you had to
because
put that
France's
up.
Foreign Minister Barrett publicly said, quote, "There are reasons to believe that Russia is now supporting Iran's military effort, which appears to be directed in particular at American targets."
Of course they are. Of course they are. China has a stake in the game. North Korea has a stake in the game. They all have a stake in the game. Just like Britain has a stake in the game. Just like France and Germany and America and Canada. All these countries have stakes in the game. It's just done via indirectly, isn't it? It's indirectly for the most part, and therefore you can't really point fingers.
Ukraine stated that Russia was providing signals intelligence and electronic intelligence capabilities to the Iranian regime. Ukraine is signing agreements to supply anti-drone capabilities to countries in the Middle East to help defend against Iran's Shahed drones. These interceptors that are handheld that you can fire off and they're cheap and they intercept these Shaheds. According to officials who spoke to the Financial Times, Russia's shipping explosive weapons over land through Azerbaijan to Iran as the first lethal aid to the regime. The route from Russia through the Caspian Sea to Iran was bombed by IDF for this reason. The Russians' version of the Iranian Shahed attack drone has significant modifications to its engines and its navigation and its anti-jamming capabilities, which means that these systems that Russia is sending are far more advanced than the ones that Iran was already manufacturing at home. The Wall Street Journal reported that they spoke to 3 officials who said Russia's assistance included passing Iran the location of U.S. military assets, including warships and aircraft, and that this signals that, quote, "The rapidly expanding conflict now features one of America's chief nuclear-armed competitors with exquisite intelligence capabilities," end quote. Because Iran
That was an interesting picture of Putin, wasn't it?
has thousands of drones and ballistic missiles, but they do not have the space-based satellite network. There are, in fact, only 3 major superpowers who have this type of space-based intelligence capability on that level: the United States, Russia, and China.
I personally believe that Europe and NATO as a whole has a lot of this intelligence as well. I think we definitely have more than... I think the thing with Britain and Europe as a whole is we're a lot more secretive with what we've got. We always have been.
Other countries are building up their space-based IRS capabilities, but they're not there yet. Europe, for instance, is racing to launch satellites into space, but it will take years, if not a decade, to get up and running. The simplest way to understand what has changed in the last 10 to 15 years is in the past it was, hey, here's a picture of a tank from a week ago. Not sure where exactly it is today. That's useful, but today it's, hey, that tank just moved 200 meters. Now it's stopped to refuel. Hit it now. These countries are acting as enablers. They are enabling strikes that could have otherwise never happened 20 years ago. This is
they're indirectly at war. That's what it is, isn't it?
A war-changing capability that Russia is providing to Iran, that the US is providing to Ukraine, and that China is providing to Russia. Without this information, it's unclear how effective Iran's ballistic missiles would be. How are they communicating with a blacked-out Iran? It could be the mysterious numbers station over the radio that started going out right when the war began. But like how the US has CIA officers inside Ukraine, Russia has SVR officers in Iran helping them. Russia has effective space-based intelligence, but China's capabilities outpace them in some ways. And according to this Reuters article, Chinese military officers have been in theater in Russia, behind Russian lines, with Beijing's approval, to draw tactical lessons from the war, a former US official told Reuters. So Chinese military officers have been touring close to Russia's front lines for months now. The former US official said, quote, "They are absolutely there under approval. China has been providing targeting data to Russian forces against Ukrainian units, similar to like how the United States is, since as early as October 2025.
They've probably been doing it earlier than that, haven't they? This is the thing. A lot of the information we get, it's already old when it comes to these governments. They guarantee they're already doing a lot of the stuff they've been saying. Like if they come out and say something, oh, we've just started giving intel to this country, chances are they've been doing it like for the past couple of years. We got like that's the truth, really, isn't it?
This intelligence is helping identify economic, strategic targets that are tied to the West. Oleg Alexandrov, an official with Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Agency, told one of their state news agencies that China was passing on satellite intelligence on targets, including those benefiting from foreign investment. What does that mean? It's interesting to note that the kind of targets that China is focused on helping Russia hit with more precision are U.S. foreign investment inside of Ukraine. To what end? To scare off U.S. investment? Alexandrov said, quote, "There is evidence of a high level of cooperation between Russia and China in conducting satellite reconnaissance of the territory of Ukraine in order to identify and further explore strategic objects for targeting. As we have seen in recent months, these sites may belong to foreign investors. For example, a Russian missile attack struck a U.S.-owned appliance factory inside of Ukraine. The Cold War in the 1980s, countries were able to provide weapon systems to foreign nations through plausible, deniable routes. They could fund and support proxy wars in the shadows more easily. Today, satellites make this increasingly difficult and nearly impossible to do, so instead, providing high valuable targeting data is an easy to deny capability that still allows."
Yeah, so that's what I was saying earlier about the flow of information is becoming so prevalent now that because of the internet, because of the rise of how connected everyone is, how cheap it is to get on the internet compared to what it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's become almost laughable. And that's what I'm saying about like when China turns around and says, but they haven't directly said it, but when people start saying China's giving Russia information, like, yeah, I mean, it probably has been happening for a couple of years. Like, it's so obvious now because the amount of information that we get, we're able to make, just as general people like me and you, we're able to make a better opinion on this stuff now. And the flow of information, it's just hard to hide things, isn't it?
Powers to shape global wars. Ukraine has maintained since April 2025 that China is supplying weapons and hard-to-find gunpowder to Russia. At the same time, they say China is cutting off supplies of these components and materials to Europe and Ukraine. The Ukrainian government also claimed that they had intelligence that China was actually going as far as producing weapons on Russian territory. How is this happening? The nitrates found in artillery production are found in Inner Mongolia, which is in China. It's in their Hunan province. This is, of course, where their largest defense company, Norinco, is located.
Damn.
That's like their version of Lockheed, Raytheon, all combined into one. Then the semiconductors for lethal drone production are largely made in China's province of Shenzhen, and these are trucked on train stations. The logistics train departs for Russia, and then it takes about 2 weeks to reach Moscow. China has slowly, since 2022, gone on to become the main enabler of keeping Russia's war effort going.
Probably making a lot of money while doing it as well. They're probably making a boatload of money, China, from this, which they need because their economy isn't doing very well either at the moment.
Part of the reason for this is because the PLA is eager to learn how their own equipment performs against America's. Evidence of this is images that have surfaced on Chinese social media and Telegram of new low-altitude laser systems fielded on the front line by Russian forces that look very familiar. This video shows troops inside a vehicle flicking switches and looking at really pixelated screens, and then a system rises out of the vehicle and rotated using a joystick to target what looks like a drone.
Yeah, this is because China's trying to assess how well they could do in a fight against America so they can ultimately take Taiwan. That's the goal there, isn't it? Let's be honest. Taiwan, I saw someone say this online, and I think it's brilliant. Taiwan is like Arrakis. All right, like it's the Arrakis, but instead of spice, like in Dune, it's microchips for computers, and so people want it, but also having it can be dangerous. And it could definitely start a giant war.
The enemy UAV catches fire and spins out of control, and this is believed to almost certainly be the Chinese-produced weapon called the Shenyang. Ukrainian officials are increasingly warning that China is arming Russia with these dual-use drone components and critical electronics for missile guidance systems, and higher-end tools for tank production, barrel creation, optics, and missile fuel.
This is why aliens have not, well, I think they're already here personally, but this is why they've not made themselves known, because we're such a stupid creature, us humans, of just fighting each other so much over land. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Can't we do something better? I don't know. After watching Artemis 2 take off, it makes me feel like humanity, if we work together, could do some insanely amazing things. And we're just fighting over inches of land. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
According to Ukrainian military intelligence, the majority of parts found in the Russian Shahed attack drones are from China. Leaked intelligence reports confirm that Chinese and Russian troops are secretly training together. Over 800 pages of an official Russian document obtained by the hacker group called Black Moon and verified by the Royal United Services Institute map out the details of the cooperation. Chinese paratroopers are gaining valuable large-scale airborne invasion experience, training, and equipment from Russian counterparts who've had this capability since the Soviet days. The agreement shows that Russia is providing training and outfitting an entire Chinese battalion with air-droppable armored vehicles. This includes over 24 BMD infantry fighting vehicles, light tanks, and everything needed to sustain an airborne landing force on the ground. Once this first battalion masters the art of airborne special operations, they pass that knowledge on to the rest of the Chinese army for widespread adoption. The leaked documents describe China's interest in rapidly capturing Taiwan, and also how China plans to expand their air mobility to threaten entire Western Pacific region, including U.S. territories. The China and Russia...
The moment China decides to do something, that's it. It's endgame, isn't it? Let's be honest. It literally turns into a world war at that point. The moment China either wants to take Taiwan or starts getting involved too much and the US and Taiwan start having some sparks flying, it's over. That's it.
Russia cooperation is counterintuitive, though, because these two have been enemies for a long time. They nearly fought a full-scale war in 1969 along their border that threatened to escalate to nuclear war. So what changed? Part of what supercharged their alliance is the creation of new physical infrastructure that just did not exist before. In 2009, ESPO Phase 1 pipeline moved oil from Siberia towards China for the first time, and then in 2011 was the first actual direct pipeline from Russia to China. These pipelines run around 3,000 kilometers long. The power of the Siberian gas pipeline, that cost about $70 billion to create, started functioning only in 2019, and now that moves $240 billion in trade between China and Russia. That's up from just $8 billion in the year 2000. What that means is the economic ties between the two have exploded, and their interests are far more aligned today. This is largely driven by that oil and gas with China, which accounts for roughly 30% of Russia's exports.
Wow.
Russia, China, Iran, North Korea are all loosely aligned against the United States, Europe, and its allies in this growing and expanding proxy war. It's turning into something far more dangerous than anything we saw during the Cold War. Before, proxy wars were dangerous, sure, but they were also somewhat contained. And
these days the flow of information is too much that we know exactly who's being involved in what war, and everyone's involved. Well, all the major players are involved, just indirectly, aren't they? And it's definitely worrying.
Had rules. Today, that containment is breaking down. Now the same powers are actively shaping how battles are fought in real time.
Yeah.
And that's a much thinner red line, I think, than we've ever been used to. All eyes are now on China over whether they will escalate in Taiwan, which would undeniably bring us into a third world war, where billions of lives would be at risk. If you want to learn more, check out this video about how Iran war is spreading into Pakistan, or this playlist on videos I've done covering the war in Ukraine.
Absolutely fantastic video, as always, by Capyami. I think he nails it at the end there. The moment China decides to get involved, that's it. That's it. You best start packing your bags, because you're getting sent to a war. That's the truth of it. And I really hope it doesn't get to that point for me and my family, and my kids and your family. I hope it doesn't get to that point, but my God. I'll leave a link down below to Cappy Army's video. Phenomenal, as always. Please go support him. Please, please, please go support him. Check out Chug, 10% off, link down below. Check out Morale if you haven't already. Also, like I said at the beginning of the video, if you want to get in contact with me, if you want to send video recommendations, Instagram is the best place to do it. Other than that, I love you all. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.